How do you and others use the book?
Um, well, I use it. I'm a leadership coach as part of my business, and I'll use the book. Each client gets a book, and I'll refer to it depending upon what their particular needs are. I may refer to it and I say, let's go to chapter so and so and talk about this subject because I think you need work on that. And so it offers me a way of giving them something to look at, to think about. I might give them homework,
Right.
for I want you to read chapters, whatever it happens to be. Then I found out that people who bought the book were buying it in numbers. I mean, not huge numbers, but they were buying it as group training kind of device, where they, in one case, a large company, would buy some of them for a lunch and learn kind of thing, where every week or so they'd get together and they'd go through some of the chapters, talk about it amongst themselves. So it turned out to be, another company bought it specifically as as their leadership program, which I hadn't anticipated. So it's actually being used not just as a personal source of information, but as a group source of information in a development process.
Yeah, it sounds like a tremendous training tool in and of itself. When I want to talk to you about a couple of the 40 simple skills that you mentioned in the book, I want to start out with the very first one. You have to want to be a leader. Tell us about that.
Well, yeah, when you're in the business world, you watch people who want to progress, but they'd like to progress because there's more money in it. And so they'll say, well, I want to be the supervisor, the manager, the director, or what it is. But what they have in mind is, I make more money by doing that, and I have some prestige. They don't think about the problems associated or the challenges associated with that when they take on those roles. And many times they get in there and they don't perform well, and they'll get fired. One of the companies I worked for, was there 3 years. There were 12 directors and 3 vice presidents. When I left 3 years later, only one of those people was there, a director. They need to have the real desire to be a leader and understand what it's all about. It's not about money. It's not about the ego. It's what I tell people. It's all about making a difference in people's lives. And if they don't have that kind of ambition or desire, then I don't think it's the right path for them.
So people who want to be a leader, if their primary motivation for wanting to be a leader is monetary, then they probably should kind of check themselves and say, what is...
Absolutely. That's not real motivation. If your leadership skills are good, this is something you want to do and you're able to do it, all of those things will come. You won't have to play too many political games, but it's better for you, it's better for the people around you.
Now, for the second simple skill out of the 40, you mentioned that a person needs to have a vision.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Well, somebody once said, if you don't know where you're going, any path will get you there. So if you're going to help direct the path of a group of people, it would help to know where you're going to go, and the vision is, it might be a particular task on the lower level. Right. I know what this task is. I know what needs to be done about that. I know what it's supposed to look like at the end, and everything that's associated with it, and then help those people to get there. From a larger level, like an executive level or even an entrepreneurial level, you have to look out into the future and say, where do I want to be? What do I want? And in my coaching business, I call that point B. What is it out there that you want to be? And then I'll ask them some questions like, what are the roadblocks in getting there? That's part of the leadership coaching program. But if you don't know where you're going or what it's going to look like when you get there, then I don't see how you can be that much of a success, nor do I think you can be a reasonable leader, because you don't know where you're going.
Now, towards the end of the book, one of the latter part of the book, when you continue to talk about the 40 simple skills, you mentioned empathy.
Right.
That's interesting. You would never think that empathy would be a natural part of leadership. Obviously it is, but it's not the first thing that comes to mind.
No,
Tell us about empathy.
Yeah, I think that when many people think about empathy, they think about sympathy, and it's not. Sympathy is has a kind of a bad connotation in the business world, a kind of a weepy sort of an outlook. But empathy basically is putting yourself in the other person's shoes, understanding what motivates people, why they're doing what they're doing, so that either you can use that as a leverage position, or that you can help direct them, or you understand why it is that they do those things. In most of the studies that I went through when I was doing my PhD work, when you look at the various emotional intelligence elements in the model that I use, which is the Baron model, there are 15. The number one element in emotional intelligence that emerges is empathy for those people whose success you can predict. And as a leader, and if you don't understand people or want to look at why they do things and how they do things, then you're going to have some significant problems. So empathy from an emotional intelligence perspective is the number one factor, I think, in being successful.